Gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, CaneSport. It's May 24th, 2022. I'm Gary Ferman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined as always by our managing editor, Matt Shodell, as we discuss the news of the day, presented as always by Life Wallet, where the time is now to take charge of your personal health. And Matt, a few interesting stories to talk about today. I wanted to start with the story on Jackson Howard. He's a kid that has been a tight end recruit, but as more and more college coaches are looking into him, including those from Miami, there's a reality setting in that he might be better as a defensive tackle. And so Miami has started recruiting him as a defensive tackle as well. And I think it's a great example of the evaluation process and how sometimes you need to look a little deeper on certain kids. And, you know, Warren Sapp started out as a high school tight end too, and ended up becoming a great defensive tackle at Miami. I'm not going to sit here and say that Jackson Howard is going to be the next Warren Sapp just yet, but I do think it's a great example for everybody of how coaches can evaluate and things can change during the course of a kid's recruitment.
Yeah, and I was a lowly and lonely both intern at CaneSport back in the late '90s, and I remember we used to have an office. I think it might have been in Hollywood, Cooper City, wherever. I was living on Brickell at the time, so I had to commute. That's not the story. So I remember some little kid and his father walk in, and he's like, "Hey, I'm a Miami Hurricanes commitment. I'm a running back." And his name was Dan Morgan. And like at the time, I'm like, you know,
I remember that.
I'm like, this kid's never gonna be anything. He was this tiny little kid.
Yeah.
And he really was. He looked like he was 10 years old.
Tiny's a reach, but yeah, but go ahead.
He was he was not tall and he was not big. I don't know what your definition of tiny is, but anyway.
He was a big running back.
The point is he was a running back. He was like
a 210 pounds or so.
He was a quick running back. And obviously he filled out a little bit differently than people thought. So yeah, these kids, they tend to grow in different directions sometimes. A high school player, and this is why Art Kehoe would constantly tell me he hated offering offensive linemen before their senior year because he might take a junior and there's some senior now they can't fit in the class who just blows up as a senior who gains 50 pounds. Like look at Zion Nelson from his senior year of high school to his first year of college. That happens sometimes to kids between their junior year of high school and their senior year of high school. You just don't know when a kid's going to develop. In my case, my son who plays baseball never developed. That happens too, unfortunately. But
I hope he's not watching this.
Listen, I don't even, they asked me, they're like, "Dad, why are you yelling up in your office all the time?" I'm not telling them about YouTube because of all the comments. I don't want them reading the comments and making fun of me. So I tell them I'm watching old Miami Hurricanes games and they're just so distressing that I start yelling. You know, they just hear me yelling. They're downstairs. They don't know what I'm yelling about. So anyway, he wants to play defensive end. He says other colleges will play him at whatever. Like they're happy to take him as a tight end. That's what they were planning to do. And now all these colleges are putting defensive coaches on him now instead. And I assume this was because Jackson watched the NFL draft and saw that no tight ends are getting any money. And like defensive ends are going like crazy. But he said, really, that's not the big picture for him. You know, the big thing for him he says the big thing for him is he looks at defensive line and he wants to play, and he sees that there are 4 defensive linemen that play in games, 8 when you include the backups, and really 10 in all for a season. At tight end, there's like one guy for the most part, you know.
And you know, we don't know if Jackson Howard's going to end up a Hurricane or not. He's going to visit Minnesota. He's going to visit Michigan. He's going to visit LSU. In addition to again visiting Miami. But it is interesting that there's multiple position options for him, and more than likely he will be a defensive line recruit other than a tight end recruit. All right, moving on to another story on the website today, Matt, that I think also sticks with the theme that I brought up at the beginning of the show of coaches evaluating and finding prospects. And I I think that Miami Killian linebacker Stanquan Clark really falls into that category. He's a guy that's been a late bloomer. Really impressed a lot of coaches that I've spoken to in the last couple weeks. This spring just was mega impressive, and is a guy that they went up to a jamboree up in Palm Beach County, and he just stole the show. I mean, just lit it up there. I think he had something like 17 tackles or something. Was all over the field, and now, of course, everybody wants to recruit him, including Miami is now even more heavily on him, and he now has a Miami offer and is strongly considering the Hurricanes. And Matt, to me, it's the classic evaluation story, not recruiting off of lists, using your two eyes, both looking at film and watching a player live. And Miami's been out to see him, and then making the move to offer and actively pursue the kid. And we'll see what happens with Stanquan, but I think it's an interesting evaluation story.
With this kid, I mean, I think he'll wind up at Miami just because I know Robbie and Bobby think he will, but Robbie and Bobby think everyone's coming to Miami. So, it's like you, Gary. Robbie and Bobby are channeling their Gary Ferman energy.
Yeah, I'll be happy if I see Robbie stick. I think he's going to be elite and is just a difference-making type of player. So I'm with Robbie no matter what Robbie says or thinks or whatever. I'm on the Robbie train.
Oh, yeah.
And if Robbie wants to bring Stanquan with him to Miami, all the power to him. But Stanquan is, in all seriousness, emerging as a linebacker from Dade County to watch here going into the season. And Miami is very actively recruiting him. So we've got a story on that on the website today. The other story that I thought we should talk about on the show, Matt, is the recruitment of tight end Julian Randolph. He was a Vanderbilt commit till earlier this month. The minute he decommitted from Vanderbilt, Miami offered him. And he visited the last few days with his family, including his brother, who's a 2024 recruit, his brother Max. And so we've got the story today about his visit, just where things are going with Miami. And your thoughts, Matt, on the Julian Randolph recruitment. He's a tight end. They do have several tight ends on the board. We're not sure how many they'll take. Maybe they'll take two of them. But it's sounding like Miami's got a really good shot with Julian Randolph.
Yeah, they have so many sort of quality tight ends they're looking at. I guess it's like quarterback. They'll take whoever wants to come first, out of the 5 or 6 guys that they've sort of offered and continue to recruit. He's big, he's getting stronger, but he's a big kid. He's got a good frame. He'll gain, 15 or 20 pounds easily in the next year, you got to think. And there's sort of, he has an 11.5-foot broad jump, great athlete. So that's sort of what you're looking for at the position. And he's down to Miami, North Carolina. I talked to him and his brother yesterday, and he's going to take his 2 official visits, one to Miami, one to North Carolina, and then go from there and make a decision, I think, before his season. So, not the most highly rated guy at 3 stars, but you got to trust the evaluations. Stephen Field's been around the block. Mario Cristobal's been around the block. And it was a typical Miami visit for these kids. There was so much energy around the whole campus. They showed up and all the coaches are there. They walk in the room, the coaches start jumping and screaming. They do the photo shoot. Mario Cristobal calls every coach over for the photo shoot. Then he says, "Stop the music." And they turn the music off, and he turns to Julian's brother and says, "You have a Miami offer." And they, so a lot of energy, and both brothers loved it. It was Julian's brother's first real offer. The other offer was from Mighty Campbell University, and we'll see what happens. Well, again, like I've been saying, we're not going to know a lot of these situations and kids until what's going on with these kids until probably the end of June, early July.
All right, I want to talk about baseball for a minute, but first let's hear from our friends at Life Wallet.
Hey, Morgan, what are you going to do?
I have to go to practice.
Me too.
Well, don't forget your Life Wallet.
Oh my gosh, I always forget my Life Wallet.
You forget everything.
I can't go anywhere without my Life Wallet.
Life Wallet. Saving time, saving lives.
Matt, I wanted to take a few moments and talk about the baseball program because Gino DeMari and the team had a little media session yesterday. It was a chance for everybody to kind of catch their breath and start talking a little bit and thinking about the postseason. So right now they're getting ready for the ACC tournament. And then, of course, after the ACC tournament, regardless of how they play in the ACC tournament, it would seem that they are on course to host the regional. But they really would like to, compound that with getting a bid to host the super regional. So beginning this week, it's really important that they crank up their play. We've talked a lot on this show about how they haven't performed as well the last month as they did earlier in the season. But you get the sense in listening to Gino and the players that they're starting to feel the sense of urgency of the postseason.
Listen, it's hard for this team because they have one pitcher. They have one starting pitcher and a closer. And other than that, you don't know what you're going to get. They're playing two teams in their pool that are both really good hitting teams, in particular Wake Forest, although Wake Forest plays in a stadium where I could probably hit 20 home runs. But two good hitting teams against a team that has one good starting pitcher and one good reliever. If they're not hitting, if Miami's not hitting and fielding, it could be not great. But all Miami has to do is go 1-1 and have the other two teams go 1-1, and they advance. That's the way it works with the higher seeds. So and if they win one game, from what I was told, this is by a source who I'll just call the Miami sports information person for baseball. I'm not going to tell you who he is. But he said to me, if they win one of the two games, even in the pool, then even if another team goes 2-0, I guess he thinks, then they're going to host super regionals. But I'm not sure about that. I think they have to get out of the pool personally. But, something like that. 1-1, 2-0, they're definitely super regional hosts. They're a regional host no matter what. And then, what would be great? It's going to be great because then if they're not super regional hosts, it's going to be really amazing because when they leave to go wherever they have to go, they'll line up more people with pom-poms, and I get to see that again for the send-off. It's going to be so much fun. I can't wait.
Well, I mean, look, I mean, getting to host a super regional is a big deal.
Of course. Now I think they're going to win one out of two at least and go to a super regional and advance out of the pool.
But I think that they need to feel that sense of urgency. They have not been playing great the last month of the season, and they got to get it back. So, we'll see what happens there beginning this week.
What's funny? All these other reporters are like, how great was it to beat Notre Dame 2 out of 3? Like, nobody mentioned, hey, you guys have lost 4 out of 6.
Right.
I mean, these reporters, it's like they just pat them on the back. You guys are doing great. Everything's good.
No, they have not played well for the last month.
I agree with you. They've gotten worse. They played great from about a third of the season in to about a third of the season left. And that middle third of the season, they played great.
Yep.
And I don't know what went wrong, but but the players say they're playing great, and the media is telling them how great they're playing. I guess I'm watching a different team over the last 6 games, and then before that they had another pretty bad losing streak. So I don't know what team I'm watching.
No doubt. All right, well, that's going to do it for today for Good Morning CaneSport. We thank you as always for making us part of your morning. We'll see you tomorrow. For Matt Shodell, I'm Gary Ferman. Have a great day, everybody.